All right. Gage, we just stop for a minute because people are still joining? Can we just wait
Yeah,
2 more minutes?
yeah, not a problem at all.
Okay, great. Okay, no, up here now we have a whole bunch more people.
No worries.
The first question is it possible to make the Gradbetter screen a bit bigger?
Yes, just hit Command plus when you're logged in, and that will zoom the window.
Okay. All right, so I'm just gonna welcome everybody and we'll start the meeting. My name is Wendy Lubick. Diana Blitz is here also from the College Lady, and we're really grateful that you've all come and joined just tonight for this presentation on Better. I'm going to hand it over to Gage. I am recording, plus I am also taking AI notes on this session. I'll be letting people in. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat, and we'll be making sure to get them to Gage or to answer them if we can. All right. Thank you very much. I'm just going to turn off my camera now.
You're good.
All right.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to just switch over and start with the presentation. So if people continue to join, they'll see the website tour, and we'll do that after. So this is just a quick slide deck just to kind of set the table here. So, let's start with obviously what we know, the bad news. Like, we have a lot of student loans. And I think the key thing to take in mind is that with rising interest rates and college costs, the importance of college planning matters now more than ever. Obviously, you know that because you're investing in support. The benefit is that we have more, the good news, information of what happened to students that came before us, right? So we can see, outcomes for students by college, by major. So in this case, we're looking at BC Boston College, and we can see that accounting majors are having success in repaying student loans, political science, not so much. And we can put all this together to talk about kind of financial well-being for graduates in their future, and whether we can make sure that debt avoids limiting their plans, or making sure that parents are using their savings in an effective way here. So if you think about alumni lifestyle, so I'm talking about what it's like for the students in their 20s, three drivers: college costs, major earnings, and cost of living. When we go through the website, we're going to walk through merit and need and ways to get the college costs down for you if that's applicable. And here we know it can be kind of awkward to talk about money with the family. So this is a resource that your counselors have given you so that you can go and do this in a private portal and get to a 4-year cost estimate for colleges. Couple things to keep in mind. So there's a
Gage,
lot of
can I
info.
interrupt you for 1 second? I just need to ask everybody, can everybody see Gage's screen?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay.
Yes, thumbs up.
So people can see it, only Diana can't see it. So she'll have to figure that out. But
No,
Diana, I can see it and I'm gonna be taking over I'll be recording. So you'll be
and
able
it
to.
might show up as a different tab. And so right now I'm just sharing a slide deck. So real quick, I looked at Boston College and IU when I was in school. We didn't have this information back then. The big thing sometimes students see is this big difference in earnings from the college scorecard. That is earnings information from tax returns of graduates. As you can see for Boston College, it's about 100,000. For IU, it's about 60,000. Just understanding the big difference that goes into that is where graduates live. Obviously, you'll be paid more to do a comparable job in Boston, New York, and DC than Indianapolis and Chicago. So you'll see deflated earnings for example, colleges in the Midwest. The other thing you're going to see is net price information. Okay. The important thing to understand when you see these net price tables, and the highest band here is 110,000 or more, is that in the case of Boston College, that's actually 43% of students that are included in this 110,000 or more band. So don't kind of fall in love with those net price numbers, because that 110,000, if you make 110,000, you go to Boston College, you might get 30,000 in need-based aid. If you make 250,000, you own a home, you might get zero. So it's just understanding that that band is very low and it doesn't adjust for need versus merit. And we'll go through personalizing your costs here. The big thing, obviously, is that a lot of colleges, want to get to the point where they're saying they're meeting 100% of need. But what matters is the percent of need that's met with grants. Okay, that's the free money. Colleges can meet need with loans and work study. And a lot of families are falling into what we call donut hole, where they're not getting need, but they're not sure if 90,000, a year is the right choice, or what is that kind of investment ROI. So we're going to look into that a little bit more. Just understanding what's going on from the college's perspective. In addition to increasing the tuition every year, they're also increasing the discounting. So this graph is just showing you the discount rate on tuition for 340 private colleges is over 50%. So, it's kind of like going to a car dealership and the car's 60,000, people are paying 28,000. You're just trying to figure out, are you paying 20, 40, 60? And so our hope is to help kind of glean a little bit information to what we kind of call this black box. Key thing to keep in mind, the majority of aid comes from colleges, okay? So that is where you're going to get the majority of institutional grants, which is free money. Many scholarship engines and other sources, those are outside private scholarships that can still work. However, that may be displaced by money you get from the college. Simply put, if you get 20,000 or 30,000 merit scholarship from a college and you get a $10,000, let's just say local Rotary scholarship, there are some colleges that will reduce what they're giving you by the amount of outside scholarship that you receive. So if you are looking for merit, trying to understand both the merit expectation from the school, as well as the displacement policy of the school together is really important. And so there's actually a bill in front of Congress to outlaw this, because it obviously is, what many people think unfair, because they're putting a lot of work to get these scholarships. Last, there is a trend away from these kind of transparent merit scholarships after COVID, where it's just harder to know in advance what you may receive from the school. And if you see this graph here, schools that are willing to give you that information up front are typically in the Southwest, southern part of the country, not in the Northeast. And then last, long story short, appealing is growing. So this is a stat from Sally May. Appealing is saying, hey, I'd like to figure out how I can get more grants from the school to lower my costs. That could be need or merit. The reason that colleges provide a higher discount rate, if you will, higher acceptance rate to do early decision versus regulars, because obviously then you don't have multiple colleges that you can use to negotiate with the school. So this is a stat from Sally May that a third of families appealed at the school they enrolled in. They were successful at 80% of the time, with 70% of that being free money. So it's kind of just being aware to do it. And it depends obviously on the schools that you're applying to. Obviously, no secret here, the college costs have gone up, but we're trying to make sure that we are informing you as much as possible to navigate that, because you don't want to get to the finish line and fall in love with a school that doesn't make sense financially. Just to kind of come down here, what did I say earlier? One, this 110,000 band, it's too wide to accurately estimate aid. So also understand that some schools that use what's called institutional or CSS profile look at home equity or not. So we'll talk a little bit about that more. It doesn't break out need versus merit scholarship. Merit's based on your academics, needs based on the family finances. And then obviously, big thing to keep in mind is that colleges only report net prices for freshmen that receive aid. So that could be less than 50% of the students. Another thing here, we're talking about something called front loading or renewability. when you get merit from the school, you want to make sure that that's renewable for all 4 years. So in the school here, Northeastern, we're kind of picking on them, but 80% of freshmen get aid, 67% total, right? So I mean, that really means like 60% or less total, right? So they're giving a lot in a package when you're applying to the school, but that's tailing off and not lasting all 4 years. That and the average dollar amount. So you want to make sure that you're thinking about that as well. And then key thing, and we'll talk about more about this, is, you know, if over 25% of the students get merit and your scores are in the 75th percentile or more, then it's kind of safer to assume you are going to get merit. But we have merit insights that uses award data that help estimate that for you. So we'll cover that in the website. Biggest thing I just want to highlight, you know, what is the biggest risk, right? That'll blow up kind of the college budget is just not graduating on time. So here's two schools here on the left, okay, Boston College. When you see a graduation rate for a school, that is a 6-year graduation rate unless it's specified otherwise. So for example, at Boston College, 91% of freshmen graduate in 6 years, 88% in 4 years. Okay, so pretty similar. At Williams, another school, 97% graduate in 6 years, 74% in 4 years, depending on the cohort. So it's just a big difference. That's just something that you might want to be mindful of as you search. And obviously, we have here a visual. We're going to share the slide deck, so I won't go into too much depth, but this just helps you figure out kind of what quadrant might be best fit for you based on your need and academics of the student. And so we'll just share this after. There's some resources out there that you can use as well. What I wanted to kind of zero in on here is earlier I mentioned about admit rates for early action, right? Those are higher. Obviously, the colleges like that because it increases their yield, which is the number of students that are accepted that enroll, but it also limits the ability to appeal. And so that's kind of another aspect. The biggest kind of interesting takeaway is sometimes the schools that are most likely to give you merit, right, a little bit maybe lower ranked schools or whatever, you know, you don't want to make sure you're not waiting too long to apply to those schools, missing the scholarship priority deadlines, and then missing out on merit, which can be first come, first serve. So don't kind of put those schools at the end, if that makes sense. And then this is interesting, you know, you can ask colleges for pre-reads for financial aid in the same way you could for admissions. If you are going to appeal, just make sure you don't put in your housing deposit because then you've kind of given up a little bit of your leverage in the process. So this is just kind of a little bit more of the process stuff, just highlighting my initial point here about, you know, taking your time with college planning. Obviously, everyone is here just because obviously the stakes of making a wrong decision are higher than they were a decade ago with lower interest rates. Okay, so that's a high level. I'm going to switch to now show you Gradbetter, the website. You should see a logo here, ABC. When you get the invite from the college lady, it's just going to have their logo there. Instead, you're going to join through that link. If you already signed up and you didn't go through that link, that's okay. Just sign into your existing profile, go to this link, click on the button, and you will get free access, and there will be no paywall. If I click into a profile, you'll know your profile's free when you see the college lady logo and the word partner here at the bottom. If you don't see that, that's okay. That just means you want to go through that link to get the free access. And then the point is there are a bunch of tutorials, but I'm going to kind of walk through obviously the highlights here. So the journey goes from first building a list of favorites. So those are schools that you're interested in. You can go to colleges and you can search for different majors, region. There's a bunch of college tags here based on things that might be important to you. School size. Here we also have, you know, if you're interested in dance, whatever that is, we want you to be able to filter down. There's also this merit and need rating you can filter by as well, displacement risk, etc. Okay, so when you see a school that you like, you're just going to click the little heart sign. If it's already on your list, you'll see the heart is filled. Okay, so you're going to build a list of schools. What you're going to see on this page is a little meter just showing is the school good for merit or is it good for need. So when we do the meter, we're not just showing you kind of like the high level percents. We're going to show you the percent of need met and the percent met with grants. Again, that's what excludes loans. So that's trying to show which schools are going to give you free money that you don't have to repay. That's for need. When it comes to merit, we're looking at the percent that get merit as well as the size of the award and the size relative to the sticker price. Because a college that gives 20% or 20,000 on average in merit that costs 60,000 or 90,000, well, that's a big difference, right? So we're trying to accommodate for that. The biggest thing I would just focus on this page is the school showing a preference towards or away from families without need? So Connecticut College is giving 91% of families without need merit, 58% total. So a clear preference towards families without need. If I come down here, here's Tulane, pretty similar, right? If I come further down, Villanova, going in the opposite direction. So less families without need, wealthier families, are getting merit from that school. So every page you're on is going to have like a little explain here that's just going to highlight what we think you want to focus on this page. Okay. If you want to remove a school, just click on the heart here and it will get removed. You could again search by name, or you could use the college search up here. There's a couple other things here, but we'll just kind of skip over it. It's just kind of like an overview of things that might matter, like demonstrate interest, admissions, early versus regular. We were talking about that earlier, in-state, out-of-state acceptance, testing as those policies are changing. And then last is just a graph here that shows the schools kind of plotted together. And on the left is admissions, on the bottom is test score. So obviously the top schools are on the top right. And the size of the circle is the yield. So we kind of think of that as the popularity of the school. The higher the yield, the bigger the size of the circle. But this is where you can find the schools like Connecticut College, I just happen to hover on, right? It's not too far from this top cluster of schools. Smaller yields, so you're gonna have more opportunity probably to negotiate for merit from that school. So our big focus is trying to help you as a family go from kind of this college average to what we call insights, which is using award data to provide a personalized estimate. So I left this with pretty high scores. Don't worry, you don't have to have scores this high. And maybe you just have ACT instead. So we could just put a 31 ACT. But the key is, for example, right now it's estimating about 31,000 for Connecticut College. So that's about 5,000 more than the college average. So that's us trying to give you a more personalized estimate. If I lower this test score, you can see it went down a little bit to 30,000. If I were to, lower this GPA to 3.8, I would expect it to kind of go down a little bit more, which it did to 29,000. So what we're doing in this case is we're trying to understand how much in merit seniors who came ahead of you received from that college that have a similar test score and GPA, okay, to provide a more personalized estimate. The estimates you see on the page should, be considered against the college average information and somewhat align. The other thing I want to highlight on this page is there's a little indicator that shows award frequency. So common, possible, or rare. So every college has a different award curve. Some give just a few awards at the very top. Some give a lot of people less money. So you can see Villanova, rare, right? Vanderbilt, okay, possible. Miami, all right, common, right? So the key is like, it's all different for the different colleges. This is, again, just trying to give you an expectation. Look at this in relation to the percentages on the previous page, but also look here at the right-hand side, or where we highlight merit aid displacement risk. Okay, so this just shows you if we think the school is more likely to reduce your merit dollar for dollar from outside private scholarships. Okay, if you click on the policies tab, you'll see here a snippet of the merit displacement policies for each school, and you can click to their website to learn more. Okay, there's also awards here. These are different merit awards that you could apply for at the school. The biggest takeaway is just trying to understand, is there a deadline? Or maybe there's one like fine arts or engineering that are a good fit for you? Or is there kind of what we call upon admission, which you're kind of automatically considered for? Okay, so we can see here, Stony Brook is upon admission, Tulane has a deadline. Okay, if I go back up here to the top, so we just have covered insights. Insights is focused on merit. Merit is about academics and should have nothing to do with the finances of the family. Next, I'm going to go to analysis. And here, this is where we're going to try to bring merit and need together. When you come here for the first time, you'll see an alert that sends you down the page. And this is where we're going to try to get any kind of need expectation. So you can slide over your assets, you can slide over your home equity, say, okay, we have 3 kids, we make, 108,000 a year, whatever that is, 250. You're just going to click on those numbers. That's going to update your SAI up here. Okay. The key is, we don't want you to have to put in your entire tax return just to figure out you're not going to get need, right? And we want you to be able to kind of keep your information private. So this is kind of a quick way to get a kind of expectation. The biggest thing I would highlight is that schools fall into federal FAFSA or CSS profile, which is like institutional. If you think about like the top private schools are typically CSS profile, and we'll specify those. Those schools, if I come up here to need, and I'll just come down here and put, for example, CSS profile schools, they will consider if there's multiple kids in college. So if you have twins, right? In the old days, well, I'm gonna go back. The old days was better for you. Now it's not as good, but the CSS profiles will still consider it. So if you have multiple siblings in college, not just twins, make that adjustment. If I change this to triplets, you'll actually see that the CSS profile, which is typically higher, will actually be less, okay, than the FAFSA. That's the biggest takeaway. A lot of people don't understand that because it's kind of a moving target. But if I go here, right, and let's say, oh, there's a school I wanted to add. How do I go back and do that, right? That's okay. Just hop back here to favorites, type in the name of the school. It's on your list. Here's the college average. Here's insights. Here's analysis. So we're back, right? So you can add and remove colleges at any point in the process. If I go here, this is going to walk you through that need calculation I've kind of hit on before. Percent of need met times percent met with grants. So that's the free money. So this school is using the IM method, okay, versus Binghamton's using the FM, okay? And then here, if the school's IM, they may look at the non-custodial parents, okay? So simple example, parents are divorced. Let's just say, for example, that the father makes more. They send their kid to UCLA, the FAFSA school, okay, that's FM. They only look at the mom's income. They may get need, right? In a way that they wouldn't at a CSS profile school that has a green dot looking at the non-custodial parent, okay? And obviously you could flip that to the mother and father, whoever. So there's just little arbitrage opportunities that may exist depending on your dynamic. And so you can kind of learn more about that here. It's obviously not the primary focus of this process, but just making sure that you are aware of that. So this will just show you here a need aid expectation. If I go to the previous page, it will take the higher of merit and need. Colleges typically don't stack those. That's going to get you your net cost times 4, 3% inflation is your 4-year cost. And your funding gap is your 4-year cost less your budget. So you can come down here to the bottom and say we have 100,000 or 529, 10,000 from grandma, no pressure on grandma, and we're going to contribute this amount during college. So whatever that is, you can put that budget in there. I'm just going to make this SAI a little bit higher. And so now you can see, okay, there's lower need, but now we're seeing our 4-year cost less our budget of 122,000. This is showing you our funding gap. We have set our state here to New York, okay? If I go here, when you set your test score GPA, you can toggle to your state as well. That's just gonna show in-state tuition. And then here, we're gonna see that's the reason that Binghamton's negative. So we think that Binghamton may be cheaper than what you've saved, okay? If I go and click on debt, that's just gonna show if you were to finance that funding gap on a 10 or 25-year repayment, what would that look like and how would that compare to your earnings? And then here obviously we're highlighting the difference in the 4 and 6-year graduation rate. And again, everything has an explanation here. I'm going to get more into like the earnings stuff, but in short, when you're on this page, we were showing earnings college average, but also custom to a major city. So if I come down here, if you're interested in studying business in New York, right? Well, you could see how much we think those graduates are making in comparison to, psychology majors in Akron, Ohio. Do keep in mind pre-med, like bio, those kind of things, those are typically really low because those graduates are in medical school. So obviously their tax returns are showing lower income levels. The last step here is clicking on a college like BU, seeing your personalized price, which is more useful than this kind of family income band. So based on your academics and need, your budget. And then here, remember we showed how Boston College was 43%, BU 40%, right? So only 40% of families are getting any need or grant scholarship. And if I go here, you can say, okay, well, what if the kid wants to study economics, which 6% of grads do? Okay, well, here's the earnings for those graduates. Okay, here's how much your annual debt repayment was, or would be. Here's how much they would make in these cities. These are the most popular cities that graduates from BU live. And we can come down here and see at the bottom, okay, we're in the red when we graduate based on college cost, our major earnings, and our cost of living. Now, if you're interested in living in Atlanta, a lower cost location, beautiful. Okay, problem solved. You're balling out. If you're dead set being in San Francisco, you're even more in the red. What are the ways to solve that? That is to come over here and say, okay, well, what happens if I study computer science? Okay, boom, baby, I'm in the green in all these cities. Or obviously, you can try to, lower your funding gap. So just trying to understand those factors there. Just key is, there's obviously so much when it comes to finding a college, the network, the growth. This is just one lens to layer onto everything else that you're doing. But we always want to make sure that for families that are mindful of this, not only do you feel like you're trying to get the best price for yourself, but also the best, outcome, if you will, for that student. So that's a high level summary. I'm going to quickly click on at the bottom here. So these are 3 tabs are about getting your price ahead of time or an estimate of it. Awards and appeals is about trying to improve your price after. So for example, this is redacted because it's a demo profile, but if you get an email like this and the college says, hey, you got 39,000 merit scholarship, you might want to upload that into our system and just understand, did I get more or less than students with similar academics? In this case, we estimated about 32,000. They got 39. Good deal, right? But some other schools, they got less. They got 14,000. We estimated 15, or they got 11. We estimated 11,700. So you can use this just to figure out where you might have good schools to appeal for. Key thing to keep in mind is that sometimes the schools that give you the largest merit are still the ones that are the highest out of pocket, right? Because they have a high cost, high aid model. And then you can come down here to appeal, see different factors to highlight an appeal. Come down here, grab an appeal template, send that into the school, and there's some information here that kind of walks you through the process and negotiation best practices. But that's something that many families look into. To be candid, if you're high on the college's list, they'll probably get to bump it up. And if that's 3,000, that's 12,000 over 4 years, and it should only take you a couple minutes to try to secure that. And it's really just like an awareness thing of knowing to do that. So that down here is kind of after, obviously, you've received your financial aid package from the school. All right, I've talked a lot. I'm gonna open up for questions. Again, tutorial will walk through everything that I've covered here as well. And I will look here. Oh my God, we got questions. Okay, hold up.
The big question that I see here is, what is the confidence level of the aid predictions in this tool? Does it give a prediction if the relevant sample size is very small?
Great question. It does not. So if you put, like, I know one off the top of my head, University of St. Thomas, I think is in, I think it's here, right? If I go here, NA, right? So it's tough. Obviously, people want estimates. You can't fall in love with this, right? This is an estimate based on what students received. The biggest thing to understand is that, students that provide award letters is because they're typically appealing. They're appealing because they think they should have got money because they're a great student. They're typically strong in other factors beyond just test score and GPA, such as rigor, outside characteristics. So just, I feel like it's just, it's hard to say, but maybe there's a slight bias up from that regard. But yeah, so, the key is we just try to give you a very high level here, but, the point is you need to just kind of marry this information against what you see here And this is really just try to help you see, that, hey, I'm actually a really high academic student. Am I above that college average, right? So when we think about Connecticut College, right, how we increase these values and saw the dollars go up, that's more, I think, part of the angle of it. You want to tell me some of the questions, Wendy, and I'll just get into it?
I don't see actually any other questions that were here. The one other question that I answered was, are the merit numbers you are now discussing recurring, or are they just for the first year?
Great question. First year. It's a great question. So that, if you remember the presentation earlier, I showed you a college Northeastern, but you can click on any college and see that same information. And that's just trying to understand, what is the award for freshmen versus all undergrad. So actually, it's the opposite trend line at this school, which is good. But there's a lot of awards that have to do with, like, did you do a campus tour? Okay, maybe then as a freshman you get a merit scholarship, but that doesn't renew every year, right? So just understanding that renewability is a big factor. I saw another question that come in about just kind of information. So the common data set is the favorites tab. That's kind of the easiest way to think about it. And so this is from the common data set of the schools. This information is from the award letters that we've been able to gather. This is based on calculations and common data set information. So not a lot of IPIDs. IPIDs is at 110,000 or more band. And then last, if you're on a college profile and you want to go through kind of the information on this page, then you're welcome to knock yourself out and go through all the data sources for the college comparison.
I have a question about iPads, and then we have one other question that just came in.
Yeah,
Is with the Department of Education um, being sort of decimated to a certain extent, is iPads going to be continuing?
great question. So
And
they
you want to
said,
explain what iPads is, please?
yeah, if you just go and search College Navigator, this is the most consumer facing view of iPads. Okay. So if I go here, the short answer is I don't believe so, but like I would be the last person to know, or second to last, right? So I wouldn't go too crazy on that. They've in multiple announcements, they said that there is no impact on the college scorecard, which is the earnings and other data things, right? They've been collecting this data for years, 30 years, 40 years. Like I think they know they don't want to lose out on the validity of missing a year or two. It's kind of like not running a census. So if I click on that price, this is the information. I'll zoom this in that I was referring to before. So this is iPids. Okay, iPids is like what most Naviance or high school products would have. The more kind of valuable information most people consider it is the common data set, which is information that you have to go kind of glean from the colleges individually. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, that answers my question. We have another question that is, so do we need to negotiate with the school to turn the merit aid into a recurring aid after merit aid from
Great
freshman
question. And I can take over the questions. Now I think I'm caught up.
year? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, there's a short answer. Like, so I'll just be quite frank. Like, obviously I have friends who are enrollment consultants. Like, the colleges are businesses. It's not a crime to say that. At the end of the day, like the American education system is like a national asset, and but it's more expensive, right, for people. So at the end of the day, like you don't have to feel bad about appealing. Okay, colleges don't like you to use the term negotiation. To give you like a little bit of color, the colleges got in trouble with the Justice Department in 2019 because they were colluding on financial aid awards. This is the same thing as like if you graduated with a job offer from Amazon, Apple, and Google, and two offers were at 100,000 and one was at 120,000, and they all came down to 100,000. That's effectively what was happening. Okay, so the just key is like, you know, understand that people in the financial aid offices, they don't make a ton of money. They deal with a lot of parents that can sometimes be difficult to make more money. So just be friendly, be respectful, right? Obviously, there's a lot that we highlight here about the process, right? Optics, right? A lot of things there. So I would just kind of go through this just so that you can kind of like educate yourself. It also depends on the schools that you apply to. But yes, if you have um, merit that's not renewable, then you could try to appeal. A lot of the merit appealing is because a college with similar academic standing or rank or whatever has offered you more. And if they deem that college to be comparable, then they may be open to matching that if they rank you highly. Some colleges will explicitly say, like, these are the colleges that we deem comparable. Okay, so it's kind of a deep rabbit hole. I want to stay high level, but it's something that you can educate yourself, obviously, on the site, just so that you're armed with that information. And to be honest, that's what appeals are. It's just families being aware to do it. And that's what you saw with those stats from Sally Mae, that families are having success at schools that are high cost, high aid. So do you lose the ability to appeal an early decision? That's a great question. Effectively, unless you, yes, is the easy answer. If there's a financial need focus where like you just can't afford the school because something's happened, then you can get out of it, but you can't really do it because you're unhappy with the merit offer. The biggest thing that people are always trying to figure out is if you apply early decision, do you get more or less merit, right? Most people believe it's less because the school has more leverage over you because you've applied ED. We have the data, every schools are different, so there's not like a uniform opinion on that. So to answer your question, do you lose the ability to appeal? Pretty much yes, unless there's an issue with your prior year financial situation. When they figure out your SAI, that's on prior year. So like what happened 2 years ago. If something's happened between now and then that is something that you could appeal for on a financial side, which has nothing to do with merit, if that makes sense. Is there data on the difference between, yes. So if you click here, and I know you're getting this in the platform where you work with Wendy as well, so I would just lean on her. But if you click here and you look at the schools here, admissions, the percent early is the early acceptance. The percent here is the overall. And so again, that early is ED, so you can see the difference. Like I always pick on Tulane because Tulane is like insanely higher for early. But this is more of like an admissions thing, and I would defer to Wendy, Diana, and the team there because they have a lot of valuable information there as well. Early reference discounting, is that the same as appealing? Not really. When you think about discounting, it's what is the discount off of the stated tuition that the school is kind of giving, if that makes sense. So if you go back to this screen here, you know, a school like Amherst is giving zero. So Amherst gave 2 kids $30,000 because they didn't want them to go to Harvard. Okay, 0%. So don't get wedded to this number, right? That's why we just give you this red meter. So Amherst is really not discounting. Okay, and we think about discounting, that's more typically thought of as like merit. You know, what they're focused on here is meeting 100% of need. So the discount is off of the sticker price to, we'll say, the net price. Appealing is kind of afterwards trying to improve your net price so that it is lower, if that makes sense. One more second, let's keep going. Discount, oh, thank you. Sorry, Wendy, I didn't see that. So that's great. Hopefully this matches what I said. So yeah, so the easiest way to understand your profile is you kind of just flow down from here. You add the schools, you see the college average, you personalize the estimates. When you come here for the first time, it's just going to open this box and give you a warning. So it's all going to be an A until we get your test score and GPA. And then you're going to come down to analysis where you're going to see need potential, and then get to a 4-year cost, and then click onto the colleges to compare outcomes. So that's all kind of financial fit research ahead of time. We'll call that proactive. Reactive is awards and appeals, which is trying to just improve your price after applying to schools. And that's why we have this little divider line to kind of separate these two. All right, any questions? I'm going to share the slide deck as well with Wendy so that she can share the slides to everyone after. And then obviously just get the sign up link if you haven't already. or sync your existing profile, you should see a badge here that shows that you're getting free access. That way there's no paywall for you when you hit Insights.
And I just want to say, I know this is a lot of information. Diana, Magda, and I have literally done 2 different webinars with Gage just to sort of see our way through this. And every time we go in, they seem to have made the program even more robust. So it is going to take some time to go in and play around and figure out where the information is that you need. But hopefully we can help you do that. But we want you to have this as an option, as a way to look through this. There's a video tour. There's other really, really great information here. And if there's an answer, if there's a question that none of us can answer, we're happy to send it to Gage and ask him to answer and locate the information for us. But
And I'll just say real quick, the best thing is just open up the video. Like these videos are timed to this specific spot. But if you just want to open up the video, people will run it sometimes at a slower speed than I talk, which I understand, but you can always kind of back the video up if you miss something. But just opening this side by side with the video and kind of just walking through the flow is the easiest way to kind of piece it together. I wouldn't try to jump down to analysis and straight to a 4-year cost. I would kind of build up to it, if that makes sense.
so if unless there are any other questions, you can unmute yourself and ask. If it's easier than typing a question, we'll wait for another minute or two. Otherwise, we'll let everybody go back to their evenings. But I just want to thank you. I want to thank Gage for doing this for us.
Go Pacers. All right, everyone. Thank you. Have a great evening.
Good night.
Appreciate you taking the time.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay.
Diana?
Does anybody have any questions that you'd like me to answer while I'm still on?
It was looking like Diana was like starting to type something about early decisions, merit. Could she just say that?
Coming. Okay, I'm here. So,
Thanks, Diana.
yeah, my brain was working faster than my fingers, so I apologize for that. If colleges would withhold merit aid for students who apply ED, those would be and college and kids with the similar profiles who are getting in regular decision get more merit aid. Those would be New York Times articles. We would know about that, and people would stop applying ED. Which is not to say it doesn't happen occasionally, but there's always, it's hard to determine specifically on each case because they could say, well, this kid played the saxophone and your kid didn't. Okay. So there's really very rarely apples to apples. But generally, if we're just going to look at GPAs and test scores, ED does not take away your chances for merit aid because that would be controversial. But I always, for my families who if they're applying to colleges that give a lot of merit aid, I, with my students, craft a letter to admissions and saying, this is my favorite school by far, and I see that so in other words, I'm coming off as an educated, well-informed applicant, right? I see that you give, $23,000 to 65% of your applicants. If I'm applying ED, does that take me out of that? Because you have me. And they will come back and they will answer and address. And we have those emails in. And so if finances in the end don't land where we expect them to be, we have an out from our contract, so to speak, which by the way is binding, but not legally binding. It's morally binding. We don't want to get out of our ED contracts. I really don't like it, except the law has changed. The education department has changed that system. So are more, and NIL, obviously, all kinds of things have changed ED stuff. But it's more the case, I think, with financial aid too, that we want to be, if you need money to go to college, and you're expecting to have certain aid, then those students I am very careful with about applying early decision, because it's not that the school wouldn't give them the financial aid they're due. although in this climate of FAFSA and our education department, I don't know what's going to be happening. We're struggling with our kids now who are going to college this coming year. But they will, but the what you lose if you need money from is the ability to compare offers. So maybe another school is going to offer more. So if financial aid is really something that we're counting on, then we go very slowly about aid and about applying ED, and we check things out. So, but we know, like, for example, I had a student a couple years ago who desperately wanted to go to Washington University in St. Louis, and she had long did the net price calculator, sent her findings to the admissions office and said, this is what I understand I would get based on my mom's, she had a single parent, based on my mom's income and this, that. Do you believe this is accurate? And they worked with her and she ended up getting in and getting exactly that. So it just,
And I want to give you an example from this past year because I had a student who applied to RISD, which, if you look on the list, does not give financial aid. And
does
as
not get merit.
does not give merit aid. And as the fall progressed, the parents suddenly got nervous that they were going to be losing jobs. Because living in the DC area, they were worried about job losses. The student got in to RISD. They wrote to RISD and they said, you didn't offer us any aid, but we think we're probably going to need aid because of the uncertainty of our situation. The father was a contractor, the mother was a lawyer working for the government. And RISD came back and said, we cannot offer you any aid. We will release you from your ED agreement. So the student I had told her not to withdraw any of her applications until the negotiation, until the appeal over financial aid was done. They released her from ED. They put her into the RD round. So she had to be looked at again. She was in the RD round. She ended up being accepted RD. They still did not give her money, but she was able to look at different offers from other colleges. So ED is not a handcuff, it's more of a handshake. And there are, if you are honest and you come to the school and you say, I need funds, it, either you could be released or there are ways to work around to negotiate and things like that. So what they give you is not necessarily the bottom line and the final say on some of this. And so Stacy, you said, can you break the contract? Under certain circumstances, you can break the contract because it's not really a contract, it's more of an agreement.
Correct, but not just because you didn't get merit aid. I mean, it has to be an expectation that you would get merit aid, and that's you're going in with that expectation, and then something changes.
Or if something changes, or yeah, exactly. Exactly. The reason that that ED was weakened the way it was because they were sued by the Justice Department is because there were kids who were being recruited for sports who had locked in someplace and then were recruited elsewhere and they needed the ability to make a choice afterwards, which isn't great, but it happens. Any other financial questions before we wrap this up? Thank you guys for sitting through this. If you have any questions about Gradbetter, I hope we genuinely hope that everybody's going to use this system. So, all right.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.